Board meeting to order. Should we start with the roll call?
Michelle Roth.
Present.
Orchid Oberon.
Here.
Robert Davidson is not able to join us yet. Ralph Groswald. Daniel Leonard. Ethan and Mary, I'm hoping are on their way. Actually, Robert's not going to be able to join us at all today. He's out of town this week. So, Lisa Knobloch.
Here.
Francie Jaffe.
Here.
Susan Bartlett.
Here.
Daryl Hahn.
Yes.
And Heather McIntyre is here. Councilmember Martin is coming as well today. So, we'll see when she gets here. Ethan is here now. So, Chair, you have a quorum.
Perfect. Okay, so we acknowledge that Longmont sits on the traditional territory of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and other indigenous peoples. We honor the history and the living spiritual connection that the First Peoples have with this land. It is our commitment to face the injustices that happened when the land was taken and to educate our communities, ourselves, and our children to ensure that these injustices do not happen again. And we have our inclusion statement as well. The Sustainability Advisory Board embraces diverse perspectives from its members and the public to create an inclusive space where everyone feels welcome to share their opinion. The board asks that all attendees listen and speak with respect and avoid attack on individuals or specific group identities. So the first item we have is the approval of the minutes from last month. Adjustments to those. We're going to like a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor? Okay.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? Ethan, did you approve?
Abstain.
Okay.
Do we have any agenda revisions?
No. Just I have one thing to add during items from the board, which is about the
You could just bring that then. Yeah.
Okay, so the main topic we had today was actually the draft discussion letter that Ethan has written for the Flat River IRP. So I was thinking we overall need to vote if we do want the letter to come from the Sustainability Advisory Board. And if we do vote for that, then we would work on what exactly it does say.
Good question, and it's sort of a procedural question. This is I had a chance to read through this. I want to thank Ethan for a heroic effort in putting this together, and it certainly raises concerns for me. I'm a little worried because it's very dense, but there's a lot of very important information. I've talked with Ethan about seeing ways that we can try to condense it a little bit without losing the impact. But whether or not it might make sense to have a board member, if we do decide to move forward, whether it would be appropriate to have a board member go to City Council and present it and give a little background that's a little more of a summary, so that they're not just handed a very dense and very complicated but very important document. So maybe it's premature to bring this up because maybe the board won't vote to move forward on it. I support moving forward. I think that the City Council should be aware of the information that's in here, at least to explore some of the very important points that have been brought up. But I'm a little concerned that we'll give them this very complex document. It'll go to somebody's desk and they'll look at it with all the other commitments they have, and it won't have the impact that it could have. And what is the reason for this initiative? So I just had a question about that. So I guess I'll vote to
Yeah, sure. So if the board does vote to submit a letter to City Council, there's a couple of different ways that we can approach that.
We can work through Councilmember Martin to bring something forward to council as our representative or a liaison for the Sustainability Advisory Board and bring it to council's attention, and it'll be up to them to determine if they want to put something on a future agenda to discuss it further. We can submit, a memo that goes in the council packets for their meeting that talks about the background and provides the letter, or I can work with the leadership to put something on the agenda as well. So there's a few different ways that we can approach it depending on what the board decides to do, and probably look for some guidance from Councilmember Martin based on the history of the IRP and coming to council and all of the engagement that's happened to date with that and where things are at currently.
And I would say just the last time a board brought forward a significant resolution probably was the airport sustainability resolution. And in that case, although I had a lot to do with the initiation of that resolution because I'm the liaison to the airport advisory board, but the chair and I think another member of the advisory board as well, although it's, it was more than a year, it was almost 2 years ago. Did speak to the letter before the council, and that's a preferred way of doing it because then they get to ask questions, and there are very few members of the board that have a lot of technical background. So, it's just the way it is. They don't have questions to ask.
Did the advisory board itself write that resolution for the airport?
They took a lot of, it had many authors.
Yeah.
So John Grunsfeld, the astronaut, bases his company out of Van Brand, and I drafted the original draft. It then went through the sustainability department, and they added some stuff to it, a lot of which came back out when the board saw it because they felt that the resolution was more prescriptive than really was the business of council. And the length of this indicates that may be a shortcoming of this one as well, and that it probably needs to be revised to be more brief and also to remove some technical problems that this draft has. And I'm sorry, I was traveling, so I haven't read the whole thing. If you bear with me, I would like to, but you can go ahead with the discussion there. Just don't get down.
Marcia, do you want to borrow my computer?
I have one. I just traded mine out. So yeah, if you don't know where,
yeah,
this is a loaner, and I don't know where anything is yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. No access to.
Oh, okay. It won't take me that long to read it.
What did you? Yeah, that's.
Oh.
Not so fancy.
Maybe you just want to do a quick overview?
Well, the first part, the introduction, covers the 3 pillars of PRPA, which are reliability, financial sustainability, and environmental responsibility. And it briefly outlines a few concerns with each of those pillars that the IRP puts at risk. And then goes into a number of more specific concerns, including addressing DARCOM and the risk of hail damage to the solar farm in Manitoba County, which is in the middle of Hale Alley. Financial and concern around hydrogen, concern that we may not consider all possible energy portfolios, which was one of the requirements. of the IRP. And concerned that there may not have been enough community input in Longmont because there's only one community listening session that was held here and was not very well attended. That was last November. That is one of the requirements as well for robust community participation.
Ethan, sorry to interrupt, would you say that they're relying on projections of the new technologies is suspect and rides on things that there's not a huge amount of substance to that it will actually be achievable?
I'm far from an expert in hydrogen, but my understanding is that it's optimistic. The projections in the IRP are optimistic. And we did, some of us go to a presentation about hydrogen in Boulder. That was what the experts said there, that it still has a long way to go before it's commercially available at the utility scale.
That was at NOAA, and it was Gary Ellis, and he's the U.S. Geological Survey sort of appointee expert for studying the potentials for hydrogen to come online. And when we asked the question, if you think of the fact that the internal combustion engine was invented in 1853, and by 1953 everyone was driving, you know, their Pontiacs, where are we with hydrogen? He laughed and he said, we're at 1850. So it was very disturbing to hear in that conversation that no part of the supply chain has been worked out. They don't know how to find it well, they don't know how to source it, they don't know how to transport it, they don't know how to burn it without making whatever they burn it in brittle. They don't know which forms to do it in, whether it's liquid hydrogen or, you know, gaseous. It's so, that was very concerning to me when I saw that IRP, is that most optimistic projections means you can write anything you want to, because I think what this means is that PRP is becoming heartless because there's enough pressure to go 100% carbon neutral, and I don't think it's possible yet. And so I almost feel like this letter is sort of giving the PRPA a chance to step back and say to the cities who are thinking of putting pressure on them, yeah, we need to actually take a closer look, and you may be disappointed with what we have.
I'd like to make a comment on your interpretation of that NOAA, because there are actually several proposals about what called renewable natural gas in specific. There's green natural gas and there's blue natural gas, and some of the things that you said are about blue, if they're accurate at all. So green natural gas is not typically transported at all. It is made on site by electrolysis, which means you don't have a mining problem, and your storage problem is reduced because it's made on site. That doesn't mean that the storage of hydrogen is an easy thing, but on site, when you don't have to transport it, it is easier. And there are specific to the PRPA applications. I think it's in New Mexico, but I'd have to look it up. That computer just lost its mind. But there are instances of green natural gas as backup dispatchable energy being constructed by utilities now in places where the water supply and natural storage, like an old salt mine, coexist in place. And all you have to do is put excessive renewables there that you're going to build anyway, and renewables should always be excessive. And then when you do have a renewable, you use it to electrolyze the hydrogen, and it makes a big gassy battery.
Well, Jeffrey did go through that too. He talked about green and blue, and he said that it takes a lot of energy to do all of this conversion, and you have to make the energy to do that conversion.
No, you don't. You use the sun. or the wind. You only use, you restrain it to what you can do with excess renewables. So, and he was definitely doing a little both sidesism. I wasn't there, I've never read the transcript, and I'm just saying that PRPA has been through those arguments, and their goal of using a turbine architecture that has a replaceable fuel train, essentially, or track, so that when materials science gets a little smarter about hydrogen, the plant can convert to be hydrogen burning, is a completely reasonable thing, and that, yeah, it probably won't be viable until 2035 or 2040, but we're not 100 years away from it. I know you would like to believe that, but we're not.
So I just want to say that Jeffrey did talk about this, and he said that you can use solar to convert to hydrogen, but you can't do it at scale. It takes a lot of energy, and storage is still problematic. We don't have, I think that the main point that Ethan has brought up in this letter is that PRPA does not look like they have a plan for .com. And planning on hydrogen, either green or blue, again, that's widely optimistic. And I mean, you have to basically in .com replace 100% of your energy production.
I think what I appreciated in the IRP was not what's framed in here, is that what PRP put together was exactly what you said, Mary Lynn, is that there's a lot of rocks and hard spaces all over in what they're trying to figure out. And when it came to specifically their analysis of green energy and green hydrogen, my interpretation is that's one of the technologies they have their eye on to solve the overwhelming issue, which is storage of electricity to fill the gap that can occur at any point for any reason in the grid. And so I think framing it as optimistic, that's not, I went back and I reread it, and I don't see that in the original IRP even. I don't see it as optimistic so much as, Platte River preparing for the best scenario while also preparing for the worst scenario. And I think that's why they gave us the multiple portfolios to say if hydrogen doesn't come through on this, we have to be prepared to say we're going to keep running natural gas, or we have to be prepared to put up the investment to build out more battery infrastructure, because that's our only other option for storing energy to bridge those divides. And so I see the options they presented towards us, as well as, one, we have to take the coal plant offline. And so in transitioning to this new gas, natural gas fuel source, is being prepared for, the fingers crossed, the probable likelihood that green hydrogen, hydrogen pulled from electrolysis will be an option specifically for solving the energy storage problem, which is to go to your point that all of our energy storage.
No, it is not. That because the reason for converting to hydrogen is, you have a storage problem around hydrogen, but the switching over from methane-based turbine fuel to hydrogen is to squeeze out the last several percent of carbon emissions, not to get us through the dark calm. You can get through a dark calm with the extra turbine capacity, regardless of what fuels the turbine.
And I thought the example of what happened in Texas, and that's mentioned in this letter, is a good example of the dark calm threat, because they're all, Platte River's already dealing with that issue, because what happened in Texas is that they cut corners and didn't winterize their infrastructure. So 40% of that outage was purely because the valves were frozen on natural gas, the windmills were frozen because they didn't winterize. They didn't take the advice of the expert and winterize the technology. And then the flip side of that was what compounded the problem is that the Texas utility wasn't actually connected to any surrounding states' utilities. And so they couldn't draw power from partners in the way that we do in the state of Colorado, Excel, Platte River does, to mitigate those circumstances. And so that sort of event is something we're already working to resolve by, one, taking care of our infrastructure the way we would, while also making sure that we are relying on our state partners and being partners to the other states to get through those events as well. So yes, the sun may not be shining in Colorado, but the sun is shining in Texas, which we pull.
So what I understand you're saying is that we get through a dark calm by pulling energy from the grid, not from producing ourselves.
There's many ways to do it. You know, they do have batteries in the portfolio. And Daryl, I don't remember this, but I bet one of you two does. I think the fine print of the IRP, because of the lesson of Texas, includes adding some on-site natural gas storage. You know, it's not emphasized because it's not in there. Gee, guys, look how cool all this equipment is, which is all they seem to be able to present about. But I recollect a conversation with Jason about adding on some, methane tanks are pretty easy, bitter molecules. And so I think that is one of the things that they're doing to mitigate the Texas gas line freeze problem. So, PRPA is conservative about climate change. They were deniers as long as you possibly could be. They are really conservative about reliability. So I don't think you can really make the case that this is an unreliable design. What it is a design that doesn't reach 100% by 2030. And yeah, that's what we think, and I was the person who brought the 2030 resolution before council. So, if I'm willing to defend this design and that you can't quite get there without putting a ridiculous amount of money on the backs of the ratepayers, then it's got to be true. Because I do right up into the what it was.
Is it the case by Colorado regulation that coal plants have to be decommissioned by 2030?
Every utility was required to provide a clean energy plan with the state of Colorado and enter into a contract. And I'm not sure whether 2030 was the hard date or not.
Well, there's greenhouse gas reduction goals that the state set that the PUC is regulating investor-owned utilities to reach 80% reduction by 2030. Municipal-owned utilities, as Platte River is what cooperative utilities could voluntarily opt in to providing a clean energy plan, which they did.
Clean power plant plan, I think. Yeah.
Which they did, and then there was essentially a clause, which I think if it was done before, I think January 1st of 2024, the state was essentially counting that toward something that's tangential, which is the SIP, the state implementation plan for air quality, meeting air quality standards. And so as part of that, Platte River committed to retire rawhide by 2029, which then the state included in their SIP, which is federally mandated to meet air quality standards. So we are now essentially bound by both state and federal regulations, and please correct me if I'm misspeaking to any of this, because there's complicating factors into that, for retiring that coal plant. So keeping the coal plant open is, from my understanding, not
an option. Yeah, and that was really good, Lisa. I mean, that was elaborate, and I don't think that very many of us could have come back close to getting it right. But yeah, PRPA is bound pretty tightly to close rawhide by 2030.
It's a little unfortunate, although I see it's already written into the air quality, projections that it's locked up, that you can't keep it for backup. I mean, I was doing research over the last week about natural gas versus coal. Of course, as you know, because you mentioned methane is a very huge heat trapper. But in the event of an issue, not even having it as backup, I hope that these guys have got this thing nailed, because otherwise we're going to be in trouble.
I will say, from an emissions standpoint, so all of the emissions CO2, methane, all of that gets rolled up into what we call metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And that is accounted for in the emissions of burning natural gas versus coal. And emissions from coal are still about 2 times higher than utilizing natural gas. And again, please jump in if I'm not speaking correctly, but I don't think you can run coal as backup. Like, I don't think that technology really works that way.
It's generally a base load generator, so once, it takes a while for the coal generation to get up to speed, and then once you're there, you kind of leave it there, and you want to run it for a while to get the most efficient.
So it's really not good for stopgap.
Right. It's not good for on, off, on, off.
Yeah.
And that's what they can do with the natural gas turbines, which they are projecting. And again, this is all projection, right? And there's a lot of things that are, even in the next 5 to 10 years are going to change. That
those turbines don't exist. Ethan, do you feel that?
You mean those turbines don't exist? I'm sorry.
Well, the turbines that can be brought in, they haven't been created yet. The technology's there.
I don't know.
For the replacement turbines.
And I noticed that here this references a combined cycle turbine. Did they change it, or are they still proposing an aeroderivative?
Still aeroderivative.
Okay, an aeroderivative was a combined cycle in the last iteration of the IRP, but they switched to aeroderivative in this one because of its responsiveness characteristics and its efficiency running at different levels of capacity. And yes, they're proven. They're flying over our heads every day.
Well, no, I'm talking about the hydrogen turbines at scale that would be needed.
Hydrogen doesn't come into it. Hydrogen is a future emissions reduction ploy, but it has nothing to do with the way this system is designed to work.
It's the same engine, if you will, right? It's just 2 different types of fuel. So you don't have to say, hey, we're going to use hydrogen now. We have to throw away the old engine to get new ones. It's kind of the same engine that can work on either fuel. So when hydrogen becomes commercially available and something that we can use, then Platte River can start converting to using hydrogen.
The new technology for burning them. The point here is that PRPA, Boulder County, Colorado, Longmont are pushing electrification based on future renewable technologies, while there's a plan that, if you read between the lines, is based on primarily carbon-based fuels and will be for a very long time. I mean, Ethan, can you speak to the dark-com issue?
Well, I haven't been in private conversations with them, so I don't know if they have a plan that's not in the IRP, but I'm concerned about the IRP, and I didn't see that in the IRP.
I was curious
They
why.
said that's a fundamental requirement. That was some language that they use. It's a fundamental requirement to address dark-com, and so it should be addressed in the IRP, in my opinion. And if there is a plan that they haven't written out, then I'd like to see it.
Well, there's, at several of their listening sessions and presentations, they've actually presented pretty elaborate simulations for dark-coms, and the amount of capacity that they have should work. They may have to add capacity in the 2030s or 2040s as electrification proceeds, because it's not going very fast. I wish it were going faster. We all should wish it was going faster, but we're not slated to go to a winter peak. I don't think this decade, and winter peaks are when you are most likely to experience, or winter is when you're most likely to experience a dark-com. So our winter peaks are low, and that 600 megawatts of gas capacity, plus being in an energy imbalance market, and having
reserve requirements.
Yeah, and reserve requirements should be just fine. I would think, dark-coms are their justification for building a new gas plant when everybody ideologically doesn't want to build it. That's why they're talking about dark policy. It's not because they don't think they've got enough stuff to take care of it. You know, as long as they've got rawhide, they don't have to worry about it at all. But they're planning for the decommissioning of rawhide in the year 2029.
Do you happen to know why? I think they weren't required to do this report until next year. And considering the fact that technology is changing by the minute, do you know why they rushed to have it done in 2024?
Sunset. Didn't you say what they got done in 2024?
Yeah, I think the idea was, you're right, there's a requirement to submit one every 5 years, but because of the sort of the rapidly changing landscape in terms of technology, load growth, and sort of that sort of thing, they thought that having a more frequent IRP submittal made more sense. So you didn't have to go 5 whole years before your next update. It's like, well, we can do it in 3 years or 4 years because we know the good chance it can be a little more responsive.
So they may do another one in 3 or 4 years rather than waiting 5 years.
Yes,
That's good to know.
If they changed it enough, we could even, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say, wow, so much changed this year, we need to do another IRP in a year. It's unlikely, right? But I think that's the flexibility which
And I would say I think that there was some response to folks that have been pushing really hard for that renewable goal, was that that's the way for them to see that Platte River is taking that goal seriously. In 5 years, when we were talking about a 10-year time frame to get to 100%, it was a long time for folks to feel like they trusted that Platte River was doing what they were being asked to do from the other communities that had set these goals. So there is an accountability piece to make sure that they are continuously evaluating the technology as it changes and the costs as they change and all of those sorts of things. It does put us, I think, to Mary's point earlier, in that kind of rock and a hard place, because Platte River is out in front of a lot of this, and we are trying to make these decisions in a time frame that adheres to both state mandates and local goals and responsive to the community that has set those goals.
And I would say too, utilities, because of the nature of the investment that they have to make, especially any investment that's related to changing operations, it's not a decision that you make in a year and next year you're up and running. They have to be able to project out their reserve capacity in order to participate in the market, which is a very conservative thing that they have to achieve. And also, they have to get in line to buy the equipment that's going to do the things that they say they're going to do to maintain reliability. And it's this push me, pull you up, hurry up, but it takes a long time, you know.
And I was waiting for you to get to that one. For one of you to get to that one is when they first presented the rough sketch of this IRP to council, which was in 2023. The main reason that they wanted to rush into the aeroderivative turbine was because the permitting process and construction process is long. And so that's why, that's the most concrete substantive reason for pulling this IRP in. But aeroderivative turbines are absolutely proven technology. There's no
connecting it to the burning of the hydrogen that has not been proven.
Right,
and that we aren't close to, according to, I read about people beyond Jeffrey Ellis, who I haven't seen any path that's laid out that looks like it's 10 years or 15 years. Or
well,
20 years.
You're talking about commercialization, the thing that they're building the thing they're building in Ludlow, Colorado, is also not, which is iron,
the rust
batteries, and that's not commercializable by a long shot, but it works. And that's the state of, there's the place that I can't name where they're building the hydrogen combustion system.
Utah?
Might be Utah. Again, it's not commercially viable, but if it's done by a large governmental agency or public utility, it doesn't have to be commercially viable. It just has to work. And so you can't make that you have to make that distinction. And it is one of the reasons why PRPA can't get out as far over their skis as Excel does. Is if Excel invests in something really risky, like iron-based batteries, then if it fails, they've got a lot of other backup resources around. PRPA's got just enough. And so, they're not going to build one of those yet. They have to wait until it's, in Mary's terms, more commercially usual, and where a lot of the cost is driven out of it. And that's what they were saying in NOAA about use of green hydrogen as a fuel. Everybody, it's really simple. Every step in every step in that process is really simple. It's just a few of them leak.
It takes a lot of energy.
Pardon me?
It takes a lot of energy.
No, the energy thing isn't this. That's truly a red herring. I mean, yeah, sure, you wouldn't burn coal to electrolyze hydrogen. You'd have to have some way to get it for free. That again, I'm sorry, but he was indulging in bull-sizism at that point. You don't electrolyze hydrogen using a more expensive, less efficient fuel. You just don't. But yeah, it would take a lot of energy to do that if you were going to.
So you'd electrolyze the hydrogen by burning gas?
No, you electrolyze the hydrogen by excess solar.
But you're not going to have enough capacity. So
No,
capacity. There's not enough
solar-
built into any of the plans that they offered us.
Solar, the IRP indicates that our renewable portfolio is enough and more to support our load. It's just that when those things aren't available during times of dark calm, we have to have something else.
Right.
So when all things are operating, the load is met.
Yeah, but the other thing about solar is that it generates the most when you need it least. And well, it does, And so that means that any heavily invested system that uses a lot of solar at times has excess solar. I mean, California revised all its business codes, building codes, because they didn't really realize what a solar glut meant, and now they really have a solar glut. They have more solar energy than they know what to do with, and even PRPA will have times when there's too much solar. So when you've got too much solar, you can do other things with it. Charge batteries. The IRP design includes, we'll place these batteries so that we can charge them with solar or wind when we don't need the energy. And hydrogen electrolysis is exactly like that. And that's one of the reasons that it is more of a future, because if you do that, it has to stay in the storage where you put it instead of leaking out. So we need an advancement in materials science or a salt mine, and we don't have a salt mine, so we need an advancement in materials science before that's practical at PRPA. But it's not that it isn't going to work.
I think the IRP actually addresses exactly what you're saying there. Is that on page, sorry, my eyes are at the end of the day, 110. On page 110 there, it specifically says that the study indicates there are no low or no carbon solutions to the .com thing. So that's why they're advising the different portfolios are advising using a carbon source of gas-fired combustion for dark calm, and then their expectation, or it's not even an expectation, what they indicate there is that what vendors are telling them is that we could start introducing up to 30% hydrogen into that mix starting in 2028. But the underlying portfolio is, as far as the reliability question goes, is if hydrogen does not pull through, the natural gas can continue.
That's right. So both of you were saying what I'm saying. Everyone has been saying what I'm saying, which is that, yeah, there's all of these contingencies for maybe storing some energy in green hydrogen and maybe using the sun for that. But there's no path that I've seen that says that this is actually going to work anytime soon. And meanwhile, we're asking people to convert to electrification, which if you don't personally in your business or in your home go to the low energy usage heat pumps and retrofit your house to be a passive house, which hopefully Corkett and I will work on doing some code work on that. If you don't do that, then you're paying more money. You're paying to have your heat for your house created from natural gas. So the electricity then has to go to your house to heat your house at a 70% loss. And the optimism in this, if we are focusing on electrification, we're forcing more and more and more electrification. So Marcia, do you believe that nobody will ever be required to put in a heat pump before the electrification costs have gone down because we're using all renewables? This is the piece that doesn't make sense to me.
Lisa, in 2016, I think, or so, you commissioned a study from that woman-owned business.
Modus.
Yes, Modus. There you go. And I believe one of the things that was, I believe it was that document that said that the electrification and electric vehicles and a lot of those electrification technologies start being better around 60%.
From an emission standpoint, we've already surpassed that.
Yeah.
So from an emission standpoint, it is already cleaner to utilize electrification-based appliances rather than gas-based appliances. I will say that from the code requirement standpoint, we are talking about code requirements for new construction to be all electric. I don't think those two things are, I think there's some conflation happening between those two things because yes, we want to do that as the grid gets cleaner. That transition from the grid getting cleaner, aside from the load forecasting to make sure we have the load to support that transition to electrification, doesn't have any bearing on folks actually using electric appliances versus gas appliances. At least, like I said, from an emission standpoint.
I was talking about the cost of heating your home.
So I will say from an efficiency,
if you're still, if you, it just seems like there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be stuck in a place where they don't have a really clean envelope for the house. Most of the houses in Longmont are like 50 to 100 something years old, or maybe less now because a lot of building, but many. And if there's a requirement that you have to put a heat pump, you can't put in, replace your gas burner, then you're going to have people who are going to be paying, who are going to be caught in this gap while we're pushing electrification. It just doesn't make sense.
So I think go ahead.
That's okay.
So we have programs underway that that we've talked to you all before about the whole home health program being one. So new construction, I'm not worried about that impact. The technology of cold climate heat pumps is very efficient as compared to gas furnaces and
the building codes that go along with
that increase the efficiency,
improve the envelope.
So we are considering the impacts when you're talking about retrofit because you are exactly right. If you put the heat pump into a not very efficient home, you have the potential to drive up somebody's electric bill. we are doing those programs now so that we can understand what those impacts are. We tie them always with energy efficiency. So the first thing we do are building envelope improvements. And we are doing that so that we can understand all of that data. We can understand all of the cost implications, such that if at some point there are code requirements that look at retrofitting to say, when your furnace fails, you can no longer replace a gas furnace with a gas furnace, that we have everything in place to support people in that. We are trying to do all of these things at the same time to get us to that place. We're not ignoring the fact that that could be a costly improvement for folks. And as we work on the state level with Colorado Communities for Climate Action, there's a huge focus on what are the equity implications and the affordability implications as the state potentially is looking at building code requirements. And so we are doing our best to do all of those things. We're not forcing electrification on existing buildings. We are trying to look ahead to say, how do we best prepare our community for these changes that may at some point happen?
Yeah, but there's something, because you used the word conflate really early on in there. And you need to understand, if we're talking about a critique of the IRP, you are not talking about home electrification, because it's a different actor. Longmont Utilities, the city of the, wait a minute, Mary, let me finish the damn sentence.
I'm talking about the larger picture version.
So what we're talking about is, in fact, you've got the cart before the horse when it comes to PRPA, because it was us pushing PRPA to make sure that they were expanding their capacities enough to, if electrification went fast, we thought at earlier points that they were underestimating the speed at which electrification would advance, and that would have been bad because they wouldn't have had enough. But they aren't. They're not pushing electrification, although they are with the programs like Efficiency Works supporting it. But they're not pushing it, and they're.
Well, they said they were in the. I mean, they did say that they're getting more and more involved in promoting electrification. They said that in the meeting when they presented.
But it's not in the IRP.
They said it.
I will clarify that is because the owner communities are putting money into things like Efficiency Works to incentivize that. That isn't Platte River pushing that. That's the owner communities saying this is a priority for our community, and we want to put our rebate money into rebating things like heat pumps.
Yeah, that's what I'm making my point, but let's go on.
Can I ask a question? So with the so if I have a home that's using a furnace that's currently supplied gas by Excel, is there what is the per thermal cost difference if I swap in my heat pump? Does that make sense?
It depends, yeah.
It depends on
right,
exactly,
yeah. And I do think, I mean, historically it has been cheaper to run gas appliances. Again, the efficiency of heat pumps they're wildly efficient at this point in time. I think some of the other issues around gas is the volatility of gas prices. So, we don't control Excel's rates. And then there's the question that's been brought up before about, as more folks do transition to electrification, that leaves fewer and fewer folks to maintain gas infrastructure. Those are all pieces that we are doing our best to take into consideration as we're doing all this work.
What I think too is that, especially in Colorado, is that we're starting to see the emerging research that the transportation of methane to households is significantly leakier than we thought it was. And so the emissions of any household gas appliance is significantly higher than we thought it was. And we're just beginning to
leakage has been greatly underestimated. That was one of the things. Rocky Mountain Institute did a study on that shows that's a very significant aspect.
And you get into the public health implications also.
Yeah, exactly.
They're kind of fun. I mean, it's cool science, but it's terrifying.
If you want proof about that, Xcel Energy will subsidize your electrification mitigation plan by paying for a home energy analysis and stuff. They know.
They won't get out of gas. 'Cause
Yeah,
they're afraid of
they're already laying the groundwork for their transition out of gas.
It sounds like many of you have been involved in this for a long time, and this was new to me. What was the first IRP that I heard? Are pretty confident. I came in pretty concerned, having looked at some of the information that we've been looking at. But you guys have a lot of have your feet into this pretty, and I respect your perspectives on this. And Marcia, you feel, and Lisa, you feel that they're not greatly overestimating, and we're not going to wind up in the soup.
No, I don't think they are. I thought they had what was it, 2022 might have been 2020.
IR20 was 2010.
Yeah, with the last IRP, I thought it was undermodeled and much more conservative, and that they had invested earlier in their renewables. They wouldn't have been caught by the supply chain disruptions from the pandemic, and they would have more assets now. So, people are really criticizing them by comparing them to Holy Cross, which did exactly that. They invested in renewables really early, and so, now it's
microgrid system.
And now instead of, so PRPA, when they finish the newest solar, is going to be around 50%. Is that roughly? And Holy Cross is already up at 75 or 80. And they exaggerated it. It's not, it's not as good as they say it is, but it is about 75 or 80 because they invested early. So, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to critique PRPA for being too aggressive. They're the opposite of too aggressive.
I think what's hard about communicating this, and what's I think important with communicating with the public is one, the issues of what it's going to cost to do this transition that has to happen. We can't economically afford not to make this transition happen. But I think with communicating with the public is that we're in a situation where there just isn't. We have solutions, but things are changing so quickly. There's so many unknowns that it is this just there may not be the perfect can't be the enemy of the good here, and that's what I read in the IRP most of all is that we're doing these wide-ranging forecasts of saying in the best case scenario, here's where we are in the worst case scenario, here we are by just 5 years from now. These forecasts the difference, and so in many ways, I think what I appreciate what you're saying, Lisa, with just the electrification plans, is that so much of the sustainability work just means to taking the best step we can moment by moment, evaluating it moment by moment, and as they were saying, is that we need to revisit the IRP in 2 years, we have to revisit in 2 years. So we're only writing what we know now, and what we know is green hydrogen isn't an option, but it might be, so we should prepare for it in case it does, because 10 years from now, if we aren't prepared for green hydrogen, and that's the solution, we're in trouble. Yeah, that's when we're really in trouble, when natural gas packs up and goes home, and we can't move to the green hydrogen, or we can't move to a full battery infrastructure. And so I think that's one of the harder parts. And I don't know what the answer is, but from city council standpoint and the city standpoint is how we can start to have these conversations with the public about how truly challenging the transition is going to be for the next 10 years.
Well, I also, looking at it in terms of the geopolitical situation, the only way we're going to have enough natural gas is if we're going to continue fracking, and fracking more, because gas is highly volatile. Russia is, been cast as an enemy, and we're actively acting like Russia's an enemy. We've alienated most of the countries in South America that could be supplying us with resources. So what I see is a situation where all of the renewables, PRPA said, have become really expensive. They can't meet the goals that they wanted to, because most of them, the solar is being made in China, and that stuff is more expensive now than it was when they were making the projections of the last IRP. And I just see that we're going to electrify and have to create more electricity to meet the needs, and we're gonna have to frack to meet that. So the fracking, electrification is, in the, at least the short term, going to cause more fracking, and that's just isn't fun for me. So whatever.
It's hard to argue that we have to stop fracking, so we shouldn't engage in any research about green hydrogen.
All the research should have this. It's just the planning on it, or the even putting it in a plan. It just seems like it's confusing the issue.
It's not in the plan. You know, that is there as it was a requirement for the manufacturers that they have a plan to convert their devices gradually. And that is, you know, so it was a requirement in our RFP for smart meters that fiber backhaul was at least considered in the roadmap of the provider, because we have people who don't like radios, and we have a really robust underground fiber infrastructure in this city, and so you put in requirements in your plan for the future, because that's how engineering works. But that does not in any way mean that the efficacy of this IRP depends on green hydrogen ever becoming practical, because it doesn't.
Keeps your options open, right?
Yes.
So it keeps your options open, and you make no regrets decisions today to say, well, we can turn left, we can turn right.
Oh, I'm
we don't have to
sorry.
like
And I also think it's important to Marcia, what you were saying too, is the commercialization question. And you know, this comes up in my professional work, is that this is an important signal for the commercialization aspect, because the companies that are trying to create green hydrogen, they don't have a case if no one's producing plans, IRPs that say we're looking at green hydrogen as an option. So it's a good thing for Northern Colorado, even for our economy, that we're signaling to all the green researchers, green hydrogen technologies out there to say, no, we're looking, you know, this is a community that's ready to welcome you, to work with you, and that is something we'd like you to work on, and that opens up funding opportunities. I mean, it's right there in grant applications to the government of what is the potential for this. And you say, well, look, Flat River IRP says they want 30% hydrogen by 2030, so give us that $2 million grant so we can get to work on that.
Because except for some missing advances in material science, the rawhide site is perfect for a green hydrogen system. You know, it's got places to put solar panels. It's got an overabundance of water for electrolysis.
Train tracks.
Yeah, it's got everything you want except a salt mine.
In short of that, there's the battery research that's happening too.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of battery research that's coming out. I mean, it's just, we have to have all our fingers in all the pots.
Yeah.
Because hopefully one of them has the honey.
Yeah. And IRPs are specifically, the nature of the proposal is, no matter what happens, this will keep the lights on. It's not that they're claiming it's the best possible thing. In fact, they always say we want to encourage a conservative solution, which is why we're arguing so hard about saying, you know, that the mention of some piece of technology or another makes the plan risky. You know, the plan, it doesn't make the plan risky because the plan doesn't depend on it. Just because it allows for it doesn't mean it depends on it.
Address the chair. I wonder if we are at a position, I don't want to cut off any discussion, but I'm just wondering at this point whether someone wants to make a motion, if someone has more information they think they need.
I feel like now that we've been talking about it for an hour.
Yeah, I just wonder if someone wants to put a motion on the floor to, I'm just suggesting we move this to the point of a motion.
I just want to say before the motion that, like, my opinion of it is that I just have a hard time with the letter as a committee being like, this is our opinion, this is our voice as one. I think that we are the public ourselves, so we can have our own opinion, so I do think like there's the public event to be heard for city council, but I just have a hard time with the letter saying this is our opinion as a board. But would someone like to make a motion?
Well, first of all, thank you, Ethan. At the least, you created this discussion. This was very helpful. I'm not an energy expert either. And what I'm hearing from the staff and you, Marcia, that you have confidence in IRP. And as that, even though I see a lot of effort here, my inclination right now is to really drop this and not spend council's time.
In its present form, I would not support this letter. If people want to go off and, get the errors out of it, right? Like it refers to a combined cycle gas turbine, which is just, that's 4 iterations ago in technology. Or the idea that it depends on hydrogen, or that it requires that one adopts electrification. So if those things are removed from it, then you could come up with a shorter recommendation that might be appropriate for presenting to council. And I'm saying this because I always encourage my boards to wield their power by presenting resolutions to council. However, I were encouraging this group to present a resolution. It would be about building efficiency and not about the IRP. And I'll tell you, without going technical, it's really hard for me to have noticed that not being technical is hard. But the better we do at building efficiency, and you guys get ready to nod here, the more influence we have over PRPA. The better we are at building efficiency, because it diminishes our peaks, it allows us to use energy when we choose as opposed to when we have to. So let's work on that, and let's push the council to work on building efficiency, which is actually a problem that we have much more power to do things with, and there's a lot more public fear about what are they going to make us do. This is kind of the United States, and we don't really have much power to make people do much. You can sit in a cold house and never put a heat pump in. We can't make you do it. And, but we can really encourage you and help you do the things that will make you more comfortable in your home, whether or not you choose to electrify. That's what I think I would recommend that this board would focus on. If you're going to focus on monitoring IRP, you're late for this one. So they will. It takes 2 years minimum to do a credible job on an IRP, and so get ready. Those of you, especially who have time on your turns, get ready to start bird dogging the next one. But this one's set in stone, and whatever you don't like about it, it's not bad enough to try to pull it back at the last minute. It's my 2 cents. Focus on building efficiency. Which Market does know a lot about.
I think there's other things too that if we decide not to pursue this, that the water efficiency is in the works right now, that we can actually have some opinions on that and get that building efficiencies and things like that, but it's all up to what we vote on, what we decide. Phil wants to.
I'll make a motion not to present this to the city council.
I'll second that. Assuming that's phrased correct, we have to respond. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then second.
So all those in favor of not sending the letter?
It's painful, but
I appreciate all the discussion.
Any opposed?
Well, I'm going to abstain because I think we need to make a motion to maybe do it that side.
All right, so that motion passed or carried 4-4, 1 opposed and 1 abstained. So.
And other motions on this subject.
Yeah, I think the motion was that not to present the letter to the city council.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to keep talking about it, or now that that's voted, or.
I think we can move on.
Yeah. So we don't have any public notice to be heard.
Not today.
I just, in fairness, because I've been beating up Ethan and Mary pretty hard here, but, what? Yeah, well, you put his shirt
I'm sorry, I
down.
was saying thanks to Francie showing up.
Oh, okay. But it would be in order to still have a motion to revise the letter, right? This letter has been voted not to be presented to council. So I'm trying to.
It depends on what Market meant by his motion. I mean, was it any letter?
No,
Or just this letter? Okay, so.
As far as the board is concerned, I mean, I think that's important too. Of course, Ethan is still free to send this to city council, to share with city council, just to give public comment. So that's good too, so we can't stop individual expression of papers and that's. But I think it's also, I mean, I'm stating your point to what I've been chewing on is when you had said that this was the first draft of this was presented to city council in 2023. So that was last year. I think if this is of significant interest, I also see Platte River Utility holding regular community listening sessions. They were at the recent Electrified Longmont Fair, fun table, and so I think there's also a lot of opportunities to as you said, to bird dog IRP, of the Platte River going forward as well.
In addition to that, you could appoint someone. Platte River Power Authority's board meetings are live streamed, and this summer has been the first time since I've been on council that I haven't watched the live stream of at least 75% of those board meetings. So it would be a perfectly appropriate thing for this board to do going forward, and I think we would have a much deeper understanding of what goes into this.
and be involved in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good suggestion.
And I'll be honest, having spoken to the folks at Platte River through the process, it may not pick up on it, but they really do welcome the input, and they'd like to hear from people, have the questions, so that they have the opportunity to say, well, here's what we found, here are the responses for. Wow, that's a great question. We never thought of that before. Let us circle back with our PhDs and our consultants to figure out a response to that question, because that's something that hasn't come up before. So I think, honestly, they would prefer to have more involvement and more input, more questions through the process.
They painted themselves into the corner a little bit on public involvement because they funded this huge public engagement center in Fort Collins, which, as you notice, is not in the Woodland service area. And now they want to have all their dog and pony shows up there, which makes it pretty tough on Estes Park and Longmont. But especially in the summertime, it's a nice drive to go up there and attend those. And if you have made the effort to go up there, as Gerald said, you really do have a lot of opportunities for one-on-one there. And they're all much smarter than they look in terms of their presentation skills. You know, I was just beating my head against the wall because Masood didn't say anything about the constraints. And it was clear from you guys questioning when he was presenting that you didn't understand that the new gas plant wasn't base load. And, you know, what else? There was some other thing that was, that there were regulatory requirements to reduce carbon emissions that PRPA doesn't get to choose about. You know, he should have said that and he didn't. But it's also not true if you go get to know them. They do know it. Their skill gap is in figuring out what you don't know.
I think they're also very willing to come and talk to whoever wants to ask questions. You know, it was kind of an open invitation for the past 12 months. If you have groups that want to know about this, let us know, and we'll be sure and come and talk with them. And we did have a number of organizations that reached out and said, well, yeah, we'd love to hear more about this. So, you know, so I think they're open and want to have that interaction. And I think we probably in Longmont requested more of those opportunities than others because we felt like there was an interest here.
And because it was a long drive.
Okay. So then we have items from the board. Mary, did you have something?
Yeah.
I have two short ones. Can I jump in? I wanted to give an update on the Front Range collaboration. The steering committee has been meeting and is finalizing just to explain what this is. Westminster's Environmental Board, Sustainability Board, created this initiative to coordinate with boards like ours across the Front Range. And we had probably had a meeting back, it's probably 6-8 months ago, that they were maybe 10 or 12 different communities that participated in it. And there's a steering committee. I'm participating in the steering committee. And right now we are finalizing a draft of the mission, vision, goals, and priorities for the group. It's one thing I've been pushing for is to bring this into focus. There's interest and energy, but nobody exactly knows what's going on. And so we need to give some structure to this so people know if they want to plug in and be able to coordinate sustainability, environmental issues between the communities. And the Boulder Environmental Advisory Board is going to host a meeting on November 12th, and that will be the next meeting. And a survey was done of all the people that attended, and the focus seems to be on water resilience, and they are arranging for 2 speakers to come to that meeting. So far, there's no requirements or restrictions on who comes, so if anybody wants to come to that November 12th meeting in Boulder, they're welcome to do that. And the 2 speakers that they're trying to arrange are the water chief of the state of Colorado and a representative from the Water Utilities Department. So it looks like—
Curious, sorry, if we do go, if there's more than the 3 of us?
Yeah, we just have to put a notice out that lets people know that you guys there will be more than 2 members there, and you'll be discussing things, but you won't be voting on anything as a board, so it's no problem.
I'll make sure, I'm not sure if you guys are getting everything. I know you were, but I'll just—
I haven't gotten anything for a while.
Okay, so I'll make sure to forward to you and to you so that you can let the board know on this. But I think by next week, they're going to send out, we've got people that are working that's going to send out a save the date thing, and then we'll have the official information where it is and what the time is and everything.
You said it's on water, what was this one?
It looks like the private, from all the people that attended the very first meeting and sending out this POLS, POL.S, which I wasn't familiar with, survey, they were able to determine that the highest priority seemed to be water issues. So that's what they're going to be focusing on in that meeting. And then the other thing, very quickly, for those that were on the board back 2 years ago, you may remember that Public Service Officer David Kennedy came and spoke about the sound camera technology for noise issues of very loud vehicles and that sort of thing. And this was of personal interest to me, so I checked in with him to find out what had happened with that. And he said basically the technology has not developed far enough along so they can say, oh, it was that car. That was the problem. And so they're still interested in this. There is a regulation about vehicle noise for non-commercial vehicles. You're not supposed to be able to hear it from 300 feet away. There's probably 10,000 cars in this town that don't meet that requirement. But anyway, they're still looking into this, but at this time, the technology is not advanced enough that they feel that they can do anything with it. So this was of interest to me, so I thought I'd just refer to those who heard that presentation when Officer Kennedy came and gave the presentation. Thank you.
I just want to say that Wayne Tomac, who is, I can never remember the actual name of things, he's a neighborhood resource coordinator. Yes. And he runs the little,
Sustainable Neighborhood Solutions.
Just tell me the names, yeah. Sustainable Neighborhood Solutions Committee, I'm on that. And it's a committee sort of committees that looks at applications from the NGLAs, the neighborhoods that are NGLA members, to get some grant money to improve the sustainability of their neighborhood. And so far, there's been 2 meetings since I've been on the board, and there's been an application for both of them. And it looks like he's giving them good guidance because they had good applications which met all the requirements. And I was not able to go to the meeting yesterday, but Wayne has it set up so that you can do an online review of the application, and I'm pretty sure that they passed that one as well. So
I haven't heard, but it sounded like it was pretty solid. So
yeah, so everyone so far has the 2 applications. It sounds like there's other folks in the works. They're in existing neighborhoods with existing landscaping schemes and existing HOAs. And so far they've been getting some cash to pay landscape architects to help them to figure out a scheme that is more ecologically contiguous with our ecosystem. The first one I had a big objection to because there was a big chunk of area that was just rock, which is not an ecologically sustainable idea, but everyone in the committee agreed, and the next one didn't have that in it. Everyone agreed that that's not a good idea because that's not, the way rock occurs in nature, plants grow in it and so forth, and you can't maintain it. I've never, seen landscaping that it's successfully maintained. It's just rock without spraying poisons in it, and it causes heat island effect and so forth. Yeah, so I suspect that over time we will see more of our neighborhoods, and we have 60 members of the NGLA.
I think, yeah, somewhere around there.
But a lot, maybe that many more neighborhoods, or half as many more.
About half as many more, I think, yeah.
Half as many more, so we could have 90. So if you live in a neighborhood that doesn't have an NGLA membership, I'm working with another neighborhood contiguous with ours, Kensington, to help them get theirs started. That's got a lot of the lower income single-family home and apartment dwelling folks. I think it's just a good thing to be aware of in the neighborhood, in the city, and to get involved in that in the NGLA if you can.
Is there a list of neighborhoods somewhere?
I've asked so many times and I've
so.
never found
yeah,
it.
because it kind of fluctuates. But one of the things that I think is really cool and pretty unique about the Neighborhood Group Leaders Association is it's not exclusive to HOAs. So it's any registered neighborhood group. So it can be a group of neighbors that get together and say, we are representing this neighborhood, and then all they have to do is register with the NGLA. So it's the representation is much more broad than a traditional homeowners association. There are HOAs that are part of it, but it's much more
neighborhoods that are members of the NGLA, but the HOA isn't actually the representative.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, so it's not, yeah, so there can be HOAs that are part of it. Yeah. Sometimes HOAs are like almost whole neighborhood districts unto themselves. Yeah. So, but yeah, so it's a really unique group that I think is been going for 30 or 40 years now. So yeah.
What's the grant deadline?
So the grant deadlines, this was the last one for this year, and they're every 2 months. It's February is the next, then April, then June, then August, and then October. So it's every 2 months, and the applications are pretty simple. They're kind of painless.
Yeah, and it's under the broad umbrella of sustainability. So if you,
it doesn't have to be your landscaping.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've had folks do grain barrel workshops.
Education is a focus.
Mm-hmm.
Workshops.
Yeah, there's a couple buckets that you can apply for, but really anything under that broad umbrella of sustainability, folks can come forward with for money for their neighborhood.
If your neighborhood really gets it together, you can get up to $15,000 for a really serious and involved project that's going to make a significant impact. So it's something that's worth looking into and looking at.
Quickly, I would maybe skip over the items from staff. I just wanted to let folks know that our building services folks are going to City Council on November 12th, unless it gets pushed. I don't know if you've heard of anything with National League of Cities. We heard that maybe things would get pushed if that gets canceled, but I haven't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so most likely to talk about the building code updates. So it's an initial discussion with City Council to get some direction from them on what they want to pursue potentially around building electrification and either code options or other ways to incentivize building electrification. Susan and I will be there to support building services in that, but because it's especially before our next meeting, I just wanted to let you all know that was happening, and then we will be, depending on what direction we get from council on that, engaging with you all to help inform what some of those codes look like, and the regional code cohort that we've been participating.
What was the date of that? Is that
November 12th. Yeah.
So probably,
yes.
Yeah.
I know, it's the other, yeah, you gotta choose.
You might get a free meal if you go down the bowl.
So, yeah, and another thing, it looks like the way things are going is that the cities who were really far ahead in terms of forcing people to electrify are losing in the courts. So we're probably going to be looking more at incentives and education and figuring out how much money you save if you invest in these, all those things, and not, you can't sell a gas furnace in the city of Longmont anymore. Not going to do that. What it might be cheaper to replace your existing HVAC with heat pump technology. Because will help you, or cheaper because your permitting fees will be lower, or those kinds of things the city can do. They're probably not going to force anybody to do it.
Can you say what tell what the appetite is on City Council for more stringent design coding of new construction? Specifically at our last meeting, we talked about passive solar design, but I'm even thinking, you look at natural disaster zones where there's a movement to make sure new construction is more resilient for expected disasters. So in Florida, it's raising the foundation, being prepared for hurricane winds, but in Longmont, it's everything from passive solar design to more resilience to grass and forest fires. I'm just wondering if there's an appetite, because I know that drives up the cost for new construction.
We do things that drive up cost for construction. So, for example, if a multifamily building above a certain number of units has to have sprinklers in it, right? And they're there was a council member at least who voted against that because she didn't want to drive up the cost of housing, and didn't believe in making developers do things. But in general, we would certainly never codify passive building design because there are other, as our speaker, was it last month? It was last month, wasn't it?
September, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what month.
Yeah, this is late in October. He said there are many flavors of design techniques to improve building envelopes, and passive solar is, and I'm saying this solar because to distinguish it from other kinds of building efficiency, we're not making you choose one, but, and this is happening all around me in New York right now. You go to multifamily buildings and there's a big, big sign there that gives the efficiency rating of the building. So my building, for example, has an 84% efficiency rating, which is really good. I don't know if anybody ever can spend the money to get into the 90s, but they're required, to be on the sign. So that's many kinds of incentives. I don't know whether you get tax incentives and things like that, but if somebody's apartment shopping, they're going to know that a high number on that building means that their utility bills are going to be lower, and they're going to be more comfortable inside their building. There are ways that municipal governments can make it a good choice to do right thing without forcing. And I think that's where it's going to go. But it should be a real interesting discussion.
Items from council?
Well, I should have held that for items from council. I'm so chaotic about these things. He couldn't be here today. We have a would-be guest who wanted to come and say this public, invited to be heard. That he likes the idea of free but really skilled local presentations from local experts who are willing to present for free, like building envelope guy whose name I've forgotten.
Michael.
Travel.
Yes, thank you. I was like, the name last name.
Yeah, I'm sorry, he's a friend of yours. And this guy's a friend of mine, but he is a consultant to city government, and he's helped cities evaluate multiple IRPs, and I'd like to come give a presentation on understanding these processes. I think, I'm not sure I completely understand what his focus is going to be, but he's really into understanding the regulatory environment for energy. Which I was mad at Sue for not explaining that, or Colorado for that matter, and so he is interested in knowing whether you all would like a presentation about the processes of how things like the IRP happens, and in the energy sector in specific. So I just wanted to get that percolating around because I think we maybe don't have the comfort level with processes that go on for such a long range. He'll probably, he's in, I don't know, somewhere in, yeah.
Unless it goes somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that's where it is. I just, proper names are not my strongest suit. How things work is much better for me to talk about. But he couldn't be here today, but he might issue that invitation in person in an upcoming meeting. And next year would be a good time to start because PRPA will, you know, once they're through with negotiating with WAPA on this IRP, which is real soon now, right? They're just gonna start right back up. So, you know, this, I think he can tell you a lot of things if you do want to start following the IRP process with PRPA.
I think that's all we had. Someone wants to.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?